Okay, so the first RQ will be on to test on, I mean, to evaluate the demographic characteristics of your respondent. Second is to test whether the effect of gender has any impact on each of the factors or variables that you construct based on your Likert scale. Okay, and then the third RQ will be on the whether the groupings, three or more groupings, which is of your choice. Okay, whether school programs, districts, income level, okay, CGPA has any impact or any differences, okay, when it comes to the factors in your Likert scale. And finally, the fourth RQ will be on to perform the correlation test among the main variables in your Likert scale. So that are the four research questions. And then based on the hypothesis statement, okay, that you should have written, I mean, that you will write in your at the end of chapter 2, okay, the research hypothesis. Okay, so the hypothesis will start from, we reflect on the RQ2, which is on the t-test for the gender differences, okay, and then continue with the hypothesis statements, the null and the alternate for the group, the three groupings or more, okay, which the Anova test will be applied, okay, in order to answer this hypothesis. And finally, the last hypothesis will be on the just focusing on the correlation test. Okay, so based on this hypothesis statement that you set out to do in your chapter 2, and then you after finishing the data key-in process and perform the test, okay, from the descriptive statistics, okay, up to the Pearson correlation test. So now is how do you put, okay, all these tables based on, so these are the tables which which the video from yesterday was based upon, okay, the t-test, okay, the Anova, and finally the correlation. So I mentioned in the video, in the previous video, okay, not all information are relevant, okay, so you need to pick and choose which one are the most relevant one, especially the p-value, okay, the significance level, whether you reject or do not reject. Okay, so for ANOVA, it's basically the p-value and the f-test, okay, whereby for the t-test, okay, the main one will be the um, apa tu, the two-tail p-value here. Okay, so it depends on what version of SPSS you are using. So, but as long as you can see the significance in bracket two-tail, okay, under the t-test here, so that will be the one that you will be based upon. Your decision will be based upon whether you reject or do not reject. So here, all the p-values exceed 10%, 24%, 41%, 74%, and 22%. Okay, so if you refer, I mean, the Levin test of equality of variance. Okay, so the first part actually, which I did not explain in the previous video. Okay, so this part here, okay, because you are prompted with two, whether variance equal variance assumed or variance unequal variance. Okay, so based on this, usually, I mean, I don't really because we don't really cover this Levin test for equality in the syllabus, whether in the pengantar statistics or even in our research method syllabus. Okay, but if you want to interpret this, because some students from the previous semesters, okay, maybe they refer in the Google Drive or any other thesis. So basically, how to read this output is, okay, similar to the p-value from the t-test. Okay, so this is the p-value 0.6, 0.53. So this is the p-value for the Levin test. So what this means is that if you reject the p-value, if you reject the hypothesis, I mean, if this p-value is less than 10%, okay, then meaning that you are going to assume that the variance is not equal, okay, where equal variance not assumed. Okay, but if you do not reject, meaning that you are going to choose variance, equal variance assumed. Okay, so that's why you can see that the p value is in this box here lah, equal variance assumed. So do not reject means 60% means exceeding 10%. So meaning that you cannot reject the hypothesis null. So the hypothesis null is variance equal assumed. Okay, equal variance assumed. So meaning that all of this, the Levin test for equality of variance suggests that you should choose the equal variance assumed, because this one is 60%, 53%, 82%, 67%, which suggests that the p-value is more than 10%, so you cannot reject the null hypothesis of variance, equal variance, meaning that you are going to use equal variance assumed lah, because you cannot reject. If you, let's say, if this p-value is, let's say, 0.05, meaning that 5%, 5% means less than 10%, so meaning that you can reject the hypothesis. So if that is the case, you need to choose the equal variance not assumed. So what does that mean? Okay, so if in your case, let's say you're going to choose equal variance not assumed, so the p-value for your t-test must be referring to this one. Okay, so the same goes to the social support. If you reject the p-value, I mean, if you reject the null hypothesis, if the p-value is less than 10%, let's say this one is 0.03, for example, so you are going to use this one. So by right, because you assume that the variance is not equal, so the t-test must also refer to the unequal result, meaning that the p-value must always, you must use this one lah, instead of this one, but not much different actually. Okay, but in terms of the statistical, to be consistent with what you decide earlier, whether the variance is equal or not equal. Okay, so but in our case, okay, all the variance, all the p-values exceed 10%, so we cannot reject the null hypothesis of variance not is equal. So meaning that we are going to use variance equal. So that means the p-value relevant to the interpretation is this one. The same goes with the second variable, okay, the third variable, and also the fourth variable, as what I presented in the video semalam, okay, last night. So the interpretation of the t-test for your gender differences must be based on whether you reject, whether you are going to use equal or not equal variance. So in our case here, in this particular example, the p-value exceeds 10%, so do not reject means you support variance equal. So the t-test that correspond to the equal variance will be using this one lah, under the same row here. So 0.244, 0.415, okay, 0.743, and 0.223. So this is how you refer to the Levin test of equality. But for Anova, there is no problem, because it's only one p-value, okay, and the way to interpret as how I reported in the video yesterday. Okay, so enough on the t-test, okay, the Anova, and then finally on the correlation. So let's see how previous students, okay, from the last semester, okay, I chosen some assignments from the submission, okay, which I think you can use as nilah, okay, as guideline, okay. Okay, so in chapter 4, okay, research findings. Okay, so usually you will start writing a bit lah, okay, what chapter 4 is about. Okay, you don't simply go chapter 4 and, simply put the table. Okay, so let me compare certain different assignment, okay, based on chapter 4, and you can see lah the differences in the writing style. Okay, again lah, ada banyak contoh dalam the Google Drive that you can refer to. Okay, so for example, you have the chapter introduction. Okay, the same goes with this one. So there are various ways, but I will explain. I will highlight which style which is preferred lah. Okay, so for example, you should have some introduction. Okay, demographic background. So, but in terms of the output, okay, if you look at this assignment, this student here, okay, so every variable the student created a separate table, which I mentioned yesterday, is not required lah, meaning that I would prefer something like this, where you can lump together under one big table. This is a very common approach, even in journal. Okay, even in journals, you can find similar approach whereby you lump together all the demographic characteristics under one big table. So because we are just, what we want is just, how many male, how many female, I mean, in terms of the percentage. That's it. Okay, we're not really interested to discuss too much in detail because you got several, I mean, more than 5 or 6 items in your demographic. So you cannot spend like, 5, 6 pages just describing about the demographic components. Okay, so usually just around 1 page should be enough in terms of the explanation. Okay, so but the way to explain is just, how many percentage are male, female, blah 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 lah. Okay, so something like this as well. Okay, the put in one table and you show the category and the division with how many, based on the frequency and the peratus. So this is how you should present your the first RQ. Okay, the demographic characteristics of your respondent. Okay, but of course lah, kena ada sedikit penerangan di bahagian pengenalan of the chapter. Okay, and then you explain lah. Okay, again, plenty of example. Okay, from the previous thesis in your Google Drive. Okay, and then next is to answer the the second RQ. Okay, so before that, okay, let me show you apa tu. Okay, ni semua. Okay, ini panjang sikit sebab dia ada inilah. Okay, so in the next part, okay, before you go for the t-test, okay, you go for the t-test. Okay, because the t-test is based on the Likert scale question, okay, converted into the scale variable. Okay, if you recall, okay, you created this variable based on the scale measure. You converted from the ordinal measure of each of the Likert scale component. Okay, so based on these 4 new items that you construct, okay, to represent the average value of your Likert scale. Okay, so before you proceed to do the t-test, okay, the t-test, the Anova, and also the correlation. So it's quite common in the literature, okay, in the thesis, in journals, to present the basic statistics of the of the Likert scale punya component. For example, household spending punya component, the mean, this is the mean score, this is the standard deviation. Okay, so the same goes with this one. This is the mean. So how do you obtain this? Okay, it's very simple. You just go to the analyze, and you can go to the descriptive. Okay, and you can choose the you can choose lah these 4 variables here. Okay, the one that you created in the Likert scale, because this will give you the summary, the mean summary lah. For example, this one you can see this is the mean and the standard deviation. So what we want is just the mean and the standard deviation lah. Okay, of course yang atas-atas ni sebab I did not remove from the option just now, but the one which is relevant to you is this one lah. These 4 components, the mean and the standard deviation. Okay, so this is how the student obtain the mean and the sigma standard deviation for all the variables in the Likert scale converted into the scale punya component tu. Okay, for this one I'm not sure ada ke tidak. Okay, yang ni cross tabulation. Cross tabulation is one of the method that you can use. Okay, meaning that you cross tab between 2 variables to get more description about the variables, about your demographic background. Okay, I did not show this in the previous video, but if you go to analyze, you can see tables cross mana dia? Ni cross under descriptive statistics, you can see cross tabs. Okay, cross tabulation. Okay, analyze. Okay, descriptive stat, and then you choose cross tab. So what cross tab does is that you can play around. Okay, you can do a try and error lah. So basically, it's an addition to the descriptive statistics. For example, you want to cross between gender and race, for example. Okay, so what this does is that just compare to the previous one, meaning that you only know how many female and how many males. But when you cross tab between two variables, you can get more information. For example, between the gender male and female, how many males belong to the Malay punya ethnicity, Chinese, Indian and others. Okay, so you get more information rather than just male, berapa banyak lelaki, berapa banyak perempuan. Okay, ataupun berapa banyak Malay, berapa banyak Chinese, but you get more information okay, based on the apa tu, inilah the breakdown. But ini nak buat pun boleh, okay, tak nak buat pun tak apalah. If you want to add one or two cross tabulation, that would be a bonus lah. Okay, but not compulsory. Okay, because sometimes cross tabulation ni dia perlukan sebab ada berkaitan, it is related to the objective of the study. Okay, but because our objective of chapter 1 of RQ1 is just to provide a descriptive statistics, okay, of your respondent. So the tables which I shown just now, the one table that can fit everything here. Okay, so this will be sufficient lah. Okay, but if you want to have one or two cross tabulation, okay, that would be orang kata extra lah. Okay, so that okay, before you do the t-test, okay, it's quite common also that you find in the thesis, whether in journals, okay, reliability analysis. I did not teach this in class, but the student yang mana yang rajin tu, okay, akan go through the YouTube videos and see how to perform the reliability analysis from in SPSS. So what is the function of reliability analysis is that it gives you a score. Okay, a score apa tu yang maknanya whether your questionnaire tu bagus ataupun tidak, reliable or not. Okay, so there is a way, I mean it's quite simple. Okay, you can check online in the YouTube how to do reliability analysis. Okay, if you type this keyword here, Cromba Alpha, okay, in YouTube, you should find the way how to do this, because I did not teach the student how to do this. Okay, so they experiment themselves. So what this does is that you can see each atom in the Likert scale, okay, what is the average apa tu alpha value based on this Cromba Alpha punya measure. Okay, whether because dia ada markah dia lah, markah yang whether the score is acceptable or not. Okay, so in chapter 3, okay, under the method section, okay, if I'm not mistaken, dia ada juga bahagian Cromba Alpha punya score, this one. Okay, so in the chapter 3 under method, okay, maknanya part of the analysis you mention about t-test, okay, Anova, okay, independent t-test, Anova, and also correlation. But another part which can be included as well is the reliability analysis. Okay, so this you can find this plenty of this example in the Google Drive. Okay, banyak thesis masters or PhD relying on primary data, they perform this test. So this is the standard table. So if the Cromba Alpha punya value to exceed 0.9, that shows that the items in your questionnaire tu baguslah, maknanya respondent tu faham, dia consistent lah dalam jawapan. Okay, so these are the standard table that you can find in many journals or thesis. Okay, so in the reporting part, okay, when you do the Cromba Alpha analysis, the reliability analysis, so this is the value based on the table in chapter 3 just now. So you interpret lah whether it's poor ke. So usually you want the Cromba Alpha to be tinggi lah in the actual research. Okay, kalau tidak, dia akan macam bagi signal that your questionnaire tu ada masalah lah. Okay, ataupun the way you conduct you obtain the samples tu tak berapa betul. Okay, because you want the score to be good, to be reliable. Okay, but because the data yang you all dapat ni pun bukan data yang betul-betul diguna, yang obtained by the true means of, dengan cara yang betul lah. Okay, maknanya buat actual field study. Okay, even though you are using the standard questionnaire from previous research, but the way you obtain the respondent will influence what the alpha value is. Okay, so you can add this part, okay, in your thesis, okay, in your assignment to the Cromba alpha analysis. Okay, you can check online on YouTube. It's very simple to do. Okay, but I'm not going to share how to do it because this is just an addition part. Okay, an additional part which you can include. Okay, So before you perform the t-test, Anova and the correlation test. Okay, so this is one of the things that you can do lah. Okay, saya tak ajar pun, okay, as I mentioned, but you can do this as well. Okay, so but before you want to perform the test, of course you must mention in the chapter 3 lah, apa yang nak what is the meaning of the reliability analysis. Okay, what does this score means? Okay, so this can be obtained in many of the thesis in the Google Drive as well. Okay, so in chapter 4, after you finish doing the descriptive analysis, next is the okay, you show the reliability output if you have one, and then the t-test. Okay, so let me show you the different example of t-test output, okay, from previous student. Okay, so the correct way or the ideal way to do it is to provide the hypothesis statement for each of the tests, because then that will help you to decide whether you want to reject or you do not want to reject, okay, the null hypothesis. Okay, so decision must be based on the null hypothesis. The thesis that you refer to in the Google Drive, master thesis, I think dia pendekatan dia agak berbeza, because the decision is based on the alternate, the H1, not the HO. But ours, when you learn the pengantar statistics, basic statistics, you always start your statement whether you reject or do not reject the null hypothesis. So this is the correct way to, at least as far as our school is concerned lah, kita punya pendekatan ekonomi. Okay, but other schools, they make the decision based on H1. Okay, so they say H1 is rejected or not rejected. So it's quite confusing. Okay, because our statement, our decision must always be based on the null hypothesis. Okay, so and the best way ataupun the ideal way to do it, to present your output, is to state what is the HO and H1 for each of the tests. Okay, and followed by the interpretation. Okay, so let's see another one. Okay, this one as well. Okay, so dia ada the null hypothesis, the H1 and the HO. Okay, so yang relevant, okay, in the output here, okay, as what I shown previously, okay, in the t-test will be this one lah, the significant to tail here. Okay, so if you look at this thesis, dia memanglah dia masukkan the means and the deviation, but the one that will help to make the decision is the p-value here. So where does this p-value comes from? Yang ni lah. Okay, yang ni lah, the significant to tail, 0.244. Okay, if this one is based on equal variance. If you based on equal variance not assume, okay, provided that you can reject the null hypothesis here, then this will be your p-value here, 0.246. Okay, so you need to choose the appropriate punya p-value to represent your t-test. Okay, so if you look at this one, HOA represent this one, tak reject sebab p-value 0.582 is more than 0.05. Okay, 0.05 means 5% lah. Of course, I mentioned 10%. Okay, but commonly in literature, usually kita akan pakai 5% lah. Okay, 5% bukannya 10%. So you can put here 5%. Okay, unless kalau kamu dapat, let's say lah 0.9. Okay, 0.09, meaning 9%. So it's bigger than 5%, but still less than 10%. Then you can mention that here greater the p-value is less than 10%. So you can still reject lah. Okay, tetapi I think in your case, tengoklah macam mana what you get, but you can use up to 10% to make your decision. Whether if it exceeds 10%, the p-value, then do not reject lah. Okay, but if the value of the p-value is less than 10%, then you can reject the null hypothesis. Okay, so you repeat the process 4 kali ke 3 kali ke for each of the test, because dalam case ni, let's say lah ada 4 variables dalam Likert scale tu, so ulanglah 4 kali benda yang sama saja. Okay, same thing, you repeat the process 4 times. Okay, so this will be the output for the t-test. Okay, so you contoh yang ni pula. Okay, yang ni pun ada juga Cromba Alpha punya items. Okay, so this is also okay, so I think this is a bit too much lah. Okay, macam saya kata tadi, kita, because if you choose equal variance, and so then just put the output for equal variance. Okay, tak payah bagi dua-dua sekali. Okay, so for example like this one pun tak perlulah letak dua-dua sekali because you need to decide earlier lah. Okay, so I think something like this would be pun boleh pakai lah, mudah pakai. Okay. Tapi I mean I'm not saying that ini the only way lah kalau you nak pakai juga cara macam ni pun, but you must mention lah, okay, whether you choose equivariance ataupun not equivariance based on the Levin test of equality. Then kena tambah sikit lah penerangan tu. Okay. Lagi baik lah kalau ikutkan sebab you can decide why you choose equal or unequal variance. Okay, based on the Levin test of equality. Okay, as I mentioned like this one, 69%, meaning that you cannot reject, so you use the equal variance. So the corresponding p value will be 0.48 as what the student did here. Okay, so it's greater than 10% or 5%, so HO should not be rejected or is not rejected. Okay, so that is the way to, so the simplest way or the correct way just mention reject or is not rejected, or do you reject or do not reject. Okay, so that is for the t-test. Okay, next is for the Anova. Okay, sama juga untuk setiap Anova test, you must copy balik lah apa your HO and your H1. Okay, but then for Anova, you can see that the table is quite simple. Okay, just extract the information, the F value and the P value. Okay, yang lain ni kalau nak bubuh pun tak apa, tak nak bubuh pun tak apa. Okay, but the student, usually student akan letak sekali semualah. But the one that will guide you whether you want to reject or not reject is the P value that you see here, this one. So again, all P values in this example exceed 10%, so you cannot reject the null hypothesis. So there is no significant difference between risk-taking blah 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 among academic school. Okay, ini yang penting lah, because tak ada beza di antara faktor risk-taking ni di kalangan program, school program. Okay, so you repeat the process 4 times ke 3 times ke, depending how many Likert scale components you have. Okay, so that will be the way to present your Anova punya output. Okay, so state your null and your alternate hypothesis as how you stated in the chapter 2 just now. Okay, and then you present your output lah. Okay, so in terms of presentation or the way you should write is something like this lah. Okay, mudah dipahami, straight to the point, tak payah nak menggoreng-goreng panjang-panjang. Okay, so I would prefer something like this as well. And finally, the correlation test. Okay, correlation test sama juga, tapi correlation test hanya ada satu saja, null and alternate, bukan 4 ya, sebab kita nak fokus overall punya correlation, bukan pairing, maknanya bukan setiap pasangan tu kita nak tahu. Okay, so sama juga dengan correlation. Okay, correlation ni maknanya kita nak tengok, let me see dalam chapter 3. Okay, the student should have prepared the, okay, same one like macam tadi kita ada Kromba Alpha punya table kan. Okay, Kromba Alpha punya table, okay, under di chapter 3. Okay, untuk correlation pun ada table juga, biasanya student akan letak dalam chapter 3. How do you interpret the correlation value? Whether, for example, this is the standard table according to Palin 2013. Okay, 0.7 or higher is considered very high. Between this range is high and blah blah lah. So again, this table you can find many students use in the thesis. Okay, so this should be provided in chapter 3 as well. Okay, in the method section. So when you interpret the output for your correlation, you all have already mentioned in chapter 3. Apa yang dimaksudkan dengan 0.3 duduk dalam kumpulan mana, rendah ke, tinggi ke, okay, high ke, moderate ke, low ke dan sebagainya. Okay, so based on the output that okay, so this output is not preferred. Okay, what I would prefer the output for your correlation is something like this. Okay, macam ni lah. Okay, so apa dia tu, apa, tengok satu lagi. Yang ni tak maulah, yang ni lagi berserabut. Okay, so don't put something like this. This is very messy, very unprofessional punya way of presenting the output. Okay, so that's why I mentioned many times. Okay, pergi tengok dalam journal. Okay, bukan dalam student punya thesis. Okay, some thesis yang ni pun tak berapa cantik lah. Okay, yang ni slightly better lah, walaupun dia tak letak semua, tapi the something like this, cuma maknanya dia ada tiga variable: household expenditure, living standard dan juga household income. Dia ada tiga variable saja dalam dia punya Likert scale. So macam mana yang you all nampak dalam output ni, okay? Macam ni dia ada empat kan, okay? Ada empat variable. So the one that actually that we want is just the correlation value, and sama ada bintang ataupun tak ada bintang lah. Mana bintang ni mean significant. Okay, so here for example you're not interested, so what we want is the correlation value, and kalau dia significant, you all akan letak asterisk ke atas lah as what indicated in the SPSS punya output. Okay, just to signify that the output, that the correlation is significant. Kalau tak significant lah. So for example here you can see that the correlation semua positif, tetapi yang signifikan hanyalah di antara income dan juga household living standard. Okay, so avoid something like this, nampak tak betul. Okay, so you choose something like this, but again, okay, ini pun bukan yang terbaik. You can refer to other thesis ataupun journals how they present the Pearson correlation output. Okay, yang ni pun boleh lah, tetapi tak berapa jarang saya jumpa cara macam ni. Tapi yang paling common ialah cara macam ni. Okay, so you can put here significant at 1% ke 5% ke. Okay, so and then explain lah sama ada rendah ke tinggi ke. Okay, based on Testing. Boleh dengar suara saya?
Boleh dengar, doktor.
Okey, tadi UM blackout je tadi. Saya punya bilik. Kejap, saya share balik skrin. So, you all dengar tadi kat mana tadi? Last tadi? Dekat sini
Bukan, doktor, yang atas sikit.
Kejap. Ada apa yang berlaku ni? Kejap nah. Yang ni correlation tadi Ke bukan? Oh, sorry. Yang ni kan?
Doktor, kita tak nampak. Sekarang tak nampak.
Sekarang okey Nampak dah?
Dah.
Saya share screen.
Nampak.
Okay, so let me kejap. Mana recording tadi? Recording in progress. Okay. So based on what? Okay, so T-test, Anova, okay, and then correlation test. So the output that I would expect everyone to present something like this lah. Okay. Jangan letak macam ni. Ni memang nampak serabut. Okay. Ataupun macam ni pun saya tak mau. Okay, kalau you all buka journal, usually orang akan bagi macam ni saja. Okay, dalam correlation punya output. You can just search online, any journal, banyak journal yang ada correlation punya output. Okay, so this will be the ideal way to present and also show lah kalau dia ada significant ke, ada bintang ke, tak ada bintang ke. And then just explain lah sama ada tinggi ke rendah ke, positif or negatif. Okay, so that will be how to answer your RQ number 4. Okay, before I forget, okay, dia dalam academic writing, okay, academic writing, when you present your analysis, except for RQ1, okay, RQ1 tadi tu hanya fokus kepada descriptive analysis, okay, bagi nilai ni lah, bagi how many male, female, ni tak ada apa. But once you start doing the analysis, meaning that you start doing the t-test, the ANOVA, okay, and also the correlation test, okay, so the best way actually to present, okay, dia bukan sekadar kata reject ataupun tak reject. Okay, so if the topic that you choose ada contoh thesis yang lepas-lepas ke ataupun mana-mana journal, okay, so you need to actually relate your output dengan previous study ataupun dengan teori lah. Okay, so that is how you should present your output. Dia bukan semata-mata, kalau tidak dia akan jadi macam very dry lah, kering saja. Maknanya just simply reporting the statistics. Reject, tak reject, itu saja. Okay, but the academic writing means that you need to confirm ataupun relate or link your findings dengan teori ke, dengan previous study as what you state in your chapter number 2. Okay, dalam bab kedua tu ada you all letak kajian-kajian lepas, okay, yang membincangkan tentang isu yang hampir sama. Okay, kalau ada kaitan dengan gender ke ataupun correlation ke whatever lah, sebab saya minta bila you all focus on gender, mungkin tak ada kaitan, tak ada kajian. Mungkin ada kajian yang fokus juga pada gender. Okay, mungkin tak ada, tapi sebaik-baik mungkin you need to relate the finding, whether your finding is sama ke, not supported ke, is not supported ke by other studies. So this is how you should actually write. Okay, as much as possible, try to relate your findings beginning from the t-test punya analysis up to the correlation punya analysis. Okay, ANOVA and also the correlation. Sebab ini kalau tengok ni pun tak banyak lah mereka letak. Okay, tapi as far as much as possible, try lah. Okay, nak masukkan, nak kaitkan dengan kajian-kajian yang lepas. Okay, that's what you see here lah. So that will add value to the thesis. Kalau tidak, dia jadi macam statistical reporting saja. Reject, tak reject. Sebab apa reject? Sebab p-value less than 10%. Okay, but whether your finding is consistent with the theory or consistent with past study based on what you highlighted in your chapter 2, tak nampak kaitan. Sebab fungsi chapter 2 tu, your literature review, is to provide some background ataupun some benchmark lah. Bila kamu dah buat your own analysis, whether your findings tu sama ke tidak ataupun berbeza dengan kajian-kajian yang lepas. So that will be the purpose of the literature review in chapter 2. Okay, so same goes with the correlation test. You can see that the student made an attempt, okay, dia katalah sama ke tidak ke dengan Hussein ke Hanspal ke dan sebagainya. Okay, so this will be something that I look for, okay, when it comes to the interpretation in chapter 4. Okay, except for the descriptive analysis. Kalau descriptive tak ada apa benda sangat pun. Tapi untuk the t-test, untuk ANOVA and also for the correlation, Okay, try to link your findings dengan kajian-kajian yang lepas. Kalau tak sama, tak samalah. Kalau not supported, not supported lah. Kalau supported, you say supported lah. Okay, so that is how you should present your chapter number 4. Okay, chapter 5 tak banyak apa. Chapter 5 basically just the summary of the findings. Okay, apa yang you all dah simpulkan from your chapter 4. Okay, and then policy implication ni is something compulsory. Dia mesti ada lah. Maknanya polisi, kalau tengoklah apa polisi kerajaan ke, polisi swasta ke, ataupun apa berkaitan dengan, because you want orang kata what is the added value of your study. Okay, when you perform the study, siapa yang akan manfaatkan daripada your kajian? Okay, usually maybe the government or the university punya management, okay, the HCP, the HCA or the kerajaan negeri sebagainya. Okay, so usually you can find this policy implication in previous studies, in journals ke, in thesis ke apa ke. So you need to provide at least some orang kata justification lah, ataupun some penerangan, okay, how your findings ni berguna, okay, kepada masyarakat, kepada kerajaan. Kalau tidak, dia jadi macam syok sendiri sajalah. Okay, so that's why in the problem statement, you need when the three components, okay, that you need to mention who will actually benefit from the study. Okay, so that is also related to the policy implication. Okay, so in your problem statement, as I mentioned many times, okay, the third part of your problem statement, you should justify, okay, kenapa perlu buat kajian ni, okay, siapa yang akan benefit, okay, siapa yang akan dapat manfaat daripada kajian or your research. Okay, so that need to be reiterated, kena diulang semula lah, ataupun need to be elaborated, okay, need to be elaborated in your chapter 5, okay, policy implication. I don't expect much, but at least after you make the summary of your findings, okay, so in the policy implication should be highlight, you need to have at least 1 or 2 pages of the sumbangan of your kajian ni. Okay, problem limiter ni tak ada apa, okay, you can just tulis je lah, okay, based on what you normally find in the thesis. Okay, so of course for next week class, kita akan bincang lagi, saya akan discuss lagi tentang the do and the don'ts. Okay, because your submission date is not tak jauh pun, tak lama lagi. Okay, 2 weeks plus to go. Okay, so you need to start ni lah, buat benda ni dengan cepat. Okay, so I think that's it for today. Okay, so